As Carl Jung once wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Nowhere is that more true than in the realm of desire. Most men think they understand what turns a woman on. They assume it's about surface-level traits, looks, status, confidence, maybe a well-timed compliment or a perfectly executed move. But more often than not, they're wrong. Not just a little wrong, completely off the mark. Because female desire doesn't live on the surface, it doesn't shout, it whispers, it hides, it reveals itself only in fragments, in the spaces between words, in the weight of silence, in the emotional charge that lingers after a glance. Desire for her is a game of shadows. It's not the body, it's the mind. Not the action, but the implication. It's about what's felt without being named, what's sensed before it's seen. The most powerful turn-on isn't something she can explain. It's something she experiences often, without even knowing why. And that's where most men lose her because they're looking for desire in all the wrong places. They're trying to touch something that can only be triggered, not through pressure, but through presence, not through performance, but through psychological resonance. In this deep dive, we're going to pull back the layers and explore the unconscious levers of feminine lust. We'll look at emotional priming, the way storytelling and tone build arousal long before touch. We'll examine power, not domination, but presence, and how subtle tension speaks louder than any seduction line ever could. And we'll decode the overlooked art of intellectual stimulation, mystery, and restraint. By the end of this journey, you won't just understand what turns her on, you'll understand why she responds and how to speak to that hidden part of her most men never reach. So stay with me because the last section of this video might just rewire the way you understand attraction forever. If you want to understand what truly ignites a woman's desire, don't start with her body, start with her mind. Because contrary to what pop culture keeps repeating, most women aren't wired like a light switch. For many, desire doesn't erupt spontaneously. It awakens gradually, layer by layer, moment by moment, through cues that often go unnoticed by those who don't know where to look. This is where the concept of responsive desire comes in. Psychologist Emily Nagoski explains it like this. Some people experience spontaneous desire where arousal shows up uninvited, like a flame flickering out of nowhere. But for many women, especially in real-world relationships, desire is responsive. It doesn't lead, it follows. It responds to context, connection, emotion, and the meaning she assigns to the moment. So, no, it's not that she's not in the mood. It's that the mood hasn't been created yet. You see, arousal for women often emerges from a rich internal atmosphere, not from visual cues alone, but from what surrounds those cues. It's not the touch itself, but the build-up before it. Not the compliment, but the tone in which it's delivered. The quiet confidence in your words, the way you notice her, not just her appearance, but her being, her rhythm, her hesitation, her fire. Studies in neuroscience show that female arousal activates more brain regions linked to emotion, memory, and complex decision-making than it does for men. It's not a direct line from stimulus to sensation. It's a web, a delicate interplay between thoughts, feelings, and what's felt between two people without anything being said aloud. That's why mental foreplay matters. Conversations that lean into nuance. Glances that last a beat too long, words laced with subtle tension, suggestion, not exposure, anticipation, not immediacy. These are the sparks that flicker in the dark before desire takes form. So if you've ever wondered why some moments feel magnetic, why just talking to her can make her lean in closer, breathe differently, shift her posture ever so slightly, it's because something invisible is already happening, something psychological. Her mind is reacting, imagining, priming itself. Because for her, arousal begins in the shadows of thought, long before it ever reaches the skin. But if the mind is the spark, what fuels the fire? Let's talk about emotional priming. A woman's desire doesn't just flicker to life in the middle of a kiss or at the sight of skin or because of some perfectly timed pickup line. More often than not, the arousal began long before that moment, quietly, invisibly beneath the surface. It was being set up, primed, layered like a stage that was being dressed long before the play ever began. This is the art of emotional priming, and here's where most people miss the mark. They think lust is always triggered by something overt, something visual, something external, but for many women, desire is much more atmospheric. It thrives in environments that feel emotionally safe, rich, or even mysterious. It doesn't begin with touch, it begins with tone. Let's talk chemistry. Literally, when a woman experiences emotional closeness, even just through deep conversation or shared vulnerability, her brain releases oxytocin. That's the bonding chemical. It fosters trust, connection, and surprisingly can open the doors to physical desire. This is why a woman can start feeling aroused after she feels emotionally engaged, not the other way around. And this is where seemingly small things become profoundly erotic. Music isn't just background, it's mood shaping. Lighting isn't just decor, it's a soft invitation to step into intimacy. Even scent can bypass logic entirely and go straight to the limbic brain, where memory and emotion live, and where attraction is quietly molded without a single word being spoken. Now, think about storytelling. Why is it that so many women are drawn to romantic thrillers, slow burn TV dramas, and sensual novels instead of explicit visual content? Because stories allow her to feel into the character's emotional world. She gets to experience desire from the inside out, not the outside in. Take 50 Shades of Grey, for example. Critics rolled their eyes at its writing, but that didn't matter. The book wasn't about graphic detail, it was about emotional immersion. It offered a layered, evolving journey of curiosity, risk, surrender, and transformation. The sex was only the surface. The story was what seduced. Because here's the quiet truth. Women are often turned on by the feeling before the act, the energy before the kiss, the implication before the touch. But emotional setup is just one layer of this landscape. What happens when power enters the room? There's a kind of power that doesn't shout. It doesn't flex or command or try to prove anything. It simply exists, anchored, quiet, undeniable, and that's the power that draws her in. Because when it comes to desire, what turns her on isn't aggression, it's tension. Not fear, but a slow, simmering intensity. A sense that you're holding something back. Not because you're afraid, but because you know exactly when to release it. It's a dynamic that plays not on the surface of dominance, but in the undercurrent of presence. This is where the misunderstood world of dominance and submission comes in. Strip away the caricature of leather and chains, and what you're left with is something far more psychological. Attunement. In the realm of consensual power play, what women often crave isn't control. It's containment. To feel the energy of a man who can hold his own emotion and hers without flinching, who can lead not with force but with emotional precision. Henry Kissinger once said, "Power is the ultimate aphrodisiac," and for many women, he wasn't wrong. But it's not about external status. It's about inner authority, emotional gravity, that subtle, almost imperceptible command of self that makes her feel safe enough to surrender, not because she has to, but because she wants to. This is where the line between toxic control and magnetic confidence becomes razor thin. Control suffocates, confidence liberates. One tells her what to do, the other holds a boundary, invites her into it, and doesn't flinch when she tests it. And oh, she will test it. Because unpredictability isn't just a challenge, it's an erotic thrill. It's what makes the game worth playing. Think about the archetypes that women have been drawn to for generations. James Bond, Mr. Darcy, the brooding, unreadable, emotionally restrained man whose silence says more than his words. It's not what they say that seduces, it's what they don't. It's the sense that behind that calm is a volcano, and she might be the only one who could make it erupt. But here's the thing, power alone isn't enough. You might magnetize her attention, but what makes her crave you? What makes her stay in the current is something far more nuanced. That's where intellectual seduction enters. There's a reason why a certain kind of silence can feel more intimate than touch, and a well-placed question can turn a casual evening into a night she never forgets. For many women, desire blooms not from flash, but from depth. And depth begins in the mind. This is where intellectual seduction lives, not in showing off what you know, but in revealing how you think, the way you pause before you answer, the curiosity you carry, not just about ideas, but about her. It's in the thoughtful phrasing, the well-timed question, the willingness to go down a rabbit hole just to see what she'll reveal next. Attraction here isn't built on facts. It's built on mirroring, what psychologists call psychological mirroring. That moment when you speak and she hears her own hidden thoughts reflected back. Shared worldviews, similar questions, a common hunger for meaning, and suddenly something clicks. Intimacy isn't declared, it's recognized. This is why witty banter can be more erotic than a compliment. Why philosophical curiosity can make her lean in closer than cologne ever could. Because in a world obsessed with instant gratification, a man who knows how to engage her mind patiently, playfully, provocatively is rare, and rare is irresistible. Think about the slow burn, the conversations that leave her wondering what you meant, the glances that promise something but don't give it away, the stories that open her emotional vaults without prying. This isn't manipulation, it's artistry, the art of restraint, of letting the attraction stretch, evolve, tease, unfold. Every moment of delay becomes fuel. Every unspoken word becomes weight. In Anna Karenina, Vronsky doesn't need grand speeches. His presence speaks. His restraint does more than pursuit ever could. He enters the scene not to take, but to see. And in being seen, Anna comes alive. And even outside fiction, the pattern holds. A man who lets silence linger, who listens more than he talks, who knows how to dance at the edge of meaning without rushing into certainty. That man doesn't just attract her body, he stirs her soul. And yet something else keeps her hooked, something primal. Let's talk about novelty. Desire thrives in the space between what's known and what's possible. And the truth is, what we can't fully grasp often draws us in more deeply than what's laid bare. Because in mystery, the mind doesn't rest. It reaches, it wonders, it fantasizes. Peter Rollins once said, "Mystery is not the absence of meaning. It is the presence of more meaning than we can comprehend." And nowhere is that more true than in the psychology of lust. The limbic brain, the ancient part of us responsible for emotion and motivation, craves novelty. It's wired to seek the unexpected. That's where dopamine, the chemical of desire and anticipation, comes into play. Every time something surprises us even slightly, we get a hit of dopamine. It makes us want. It keeps us searching, chasing, reaching for what isn't fully available yet. For many women, this novelty doesn't have to be grand or dramatic. It's often found in the smallest shifts, a new tone in your voice, an unexpected depth in your silence, a question that breaks the rhythm of the usual. That unpredictability, it doesn't signal danger, it signals life. It keeps things awake. This is where the concept of erotic friction begins to make sense. It's the tension between closeness and distance, comfort and intrigue. It's the dance of knowing someone deeply, but still not fully. That edge where intimacy meets enigma is where arousal often lives, because when she can predict your every move, desire begins to wither. Familiarity may bring safety, but too much of it smothers fire. This is why so many long-term couples lose their spark. It's not because love faded, it's because erotic suspense did. Routines replaced curiosity. Transparency drowned mystery, and the dance that once thrilled became a march through the expected. But when novelty is kept alive, when you evolve, surprise, challenge, or even withhold in small, intentional ways, desire reawakens. It reminds her that there's still something to discover, and that discovery is in itself erotic. So, if mystery matters, what makes it sustainable? The final layer of attraction isn't what you say or do, it's what you withhold. Sometimes the most provocative thing you can do is nothing at all. In a world saturated with instant gratification and overstimulation, restraint is rebellion. And not just any kind of rebellion, it's an erotic one. Because desire doesn't only build through contact, it builds in pause, in hesitation, in the ache of what almost happened. Psychological studies on delayed gratification show us something powerful. When a reward is postponed, its perceived value intensifies. The brain starts to fixate, fantasize, obsess, and in the space between stimulus and fulfillment, something deeply human stirs. Anticipation, it turns out, is one of the most potent forms of arousal. This is why restraint, when done with presence and awareness, can be electric. A well-timed silence, a look that lingers just a beat too long, a gentle hand that almost touches then pulls back. These moments ignite imagination. They invite her to lean in, to wonder, to feel. Pelquella wrote, "The strongest love is the love that can demonstrate its fragility." The same is true for attraction. When you're strong enough to hold back, to wait to honor the unspoken tension without rushing to resolve it, you show something rare: composure, mastery, emotional maturity. Because restraint isn't about denial, it's about containment. It says, I feel this too, and I'm not ruled by it. That kind of presence doesn't just attract, it commands respect. It awakens trust, and it lets her feel the full weight of her own desire without you having to force it. Think of the great cinematic moments where two characters sit inches apart saying nothing, just breathing. Think of that one moment in The Mood for Love where they're close enough to kiss but don't. That eye contact, that unspoken ache, it says more than any touch ever could, because what's withheld becomes sacred. Restraint makes room for imagination, and imagination is where desire becomes personal. It's no longer about what you're doing, it's about what she's feeling. Now that we've stripped back the illusions of surface level attraction, let's tie it all together. Attraction isn't a performance, it's not a checklist. And despite everything culture has tried to sell you, it's not even about how you look, what you own, or how loudly you enter the room. It's about something far more intimate: resonance. The subtle magnetic way your presence awakens her inner world. She's not turned on by a body, she's turned on by a feeling, by a current of energy that flickers beneath the surface, one that makes her feel more alive, more seen, more herself. That's what true desire is, an echo that begins in her nervous system and ends in a spark behind her eyes. You've just traveled through 6 psychological layers of feminine arousal that most men never even realize exist. And if you've been listening closely, you now hold a key, one that doesn't unlock her, but the space within her where she chooses to open. So tell me, which one of these hidden triggers surprised you the most? Have you ever used any of them, whether on purpose or by instinct, and noticed something shift? A moment where her energy changed, where the room felt heavier, charged, alive. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you've seen, what you felt, what you've discovered, and if you want to keep diving deeper into the minds of women, the depths of desire, and the darker corners of human psychology, then this is the place for you. Subscribe to Dark Seduce, where we don't just scratch the surface, we dive into the fire.